It's 1 a.m. now and I should be sleeping. In the morning I'll be starting a 3-day survival outreach, and I'll need all the sleep I can get. But the idea popped into my head that maybe I should keep a diary, so that others can get a feel for what it is like to go on such an outreach. Maybe others could film similar outreaches too, since no two survival outreaches are the same. This one is different in a couple of significant ways. Mainly that I'm going alone. We usually go in pairs or very small groups. Because of my age, friends and relatives tend to help me with a lot of things. I didn't want it to be like that this time, so I've asked them to stay away. The second difference is that I'm not thinking so much of outreach as just survival, since I've never done an outreach in mid-winter, even though Australian winters are relatively mild, rarely dropping below freezing. Most of my friends call these experiments faith outreaches, but I figure that is what we do all the time. We outreach every day and we live by faith every day. But certain things we allow most of the time, like using money, traveling in vehicles, asking for donations, distributing literature. These sort of things we don't expect to be able to do in a few years, as the mark of the beast comes into use around the world. So we experiment by leaving such luxuries behind occasionally to get a taste of what it will be like then. Will we survive? Will we die before we give in and take the mark, without which we will not be able to buy or sell? Jesus did something like that with his disciples. At least twice, he sent them out with no money and no change of clothes, telling them to freely offer their services to the people of the nearby towns and to watch how God works. So that is what we do from time to time. And I call them survival outreaches because of the stricter rules which we impose on ourselves during them. It's been a few years since my last survival outreach. I'm somewhat crippled with arthritis now. I have heart problems. My memory is starting to fail and I get confused at times. All of these things have been excuses, but tomorrow I'll take a small step toward changing that. I'm not likely to freeze to death, and if I don't get anything to eat, I certainly won't starve to death in 3 days, which is all I plan to do for now. So I'm really looking forward to it, more or less a time of just drawing closer to God and watching to see where He leads me. I've packed a few things to take with me. Each survival team sets their own rules for what to take, as it depends on each individual's faith. I'll be taking my pills. I have my driver's license for identification and a library card so that I can get on a computer and email my wife each day to stop her from worrying. Pen and paper, of course, to keep a diary, and a little mini towel in the event that I find some place to shower. Also, I have this little folding stool, since I can only walk a short distance before I need to take a rest, and I'm not able to stay on my feet witnessing for hours at a time. I have a fat marker for making a sign, 2 hankies, a New Testament, and a comb. My grandchildren have carved a walking stick for me, so I'll take that too. Okay, so it's back to bed now, to catch up a bit of shut-eye before I start. Cherry's taking me to a starting point, but on the way, I tear a bit of cardboard off a box in a dumpster to make a sign. I've been thinking of what to say on the sign, and I've decided on just God or money, just to get them thinking about those 2 priorities. Like Jesus did when he said, you cannot serve both God and money. You'll end up hating and cheating one or the other. Sunday, 7 a.m. Cherry drops me off in front of a Greek Orthodox church, where I feel God is leading me to start. It's Sunday morning and there are already cars in the parking lot, so I'll see if I can get any response from people as they come and go. 15 minutes later, Cherry returns to tell me that she found a discarded carpet that I might be able to use if I'm forced to sleep on the ground. I laugh at her stubborn determination to help me, and I tell her that I don't even want to hear about it, as this is all about me and God, without her being my carer. She accepts it good-naturedly, but I have a feeling she'll be back. Over the next hour and a half, I hold the sign up as parishioners arrive, but I also hold it up for cars passing in both directions. I get a friendly honk from one, and a wave from another. Several members of the congregation actually come and offer me a donation, assuming that my sign represents a request for money. I have to explain that I'm not there for that purpose, which is a bit awkward, because it obviously embarrasses some of them, which I don't really want to do since such gestures are indeed quite kind. One guy in a designer suit and a big shiny black Ford tells me that I shouldn't be there, that this is their location and their day, and I'm somehow ruining the day for them. But around 9 a.m, 2 ushers come out and invite me to come inside. They say the service will go on for about another 2 hours. I accept their invitation, mostly to make it clear that I'm not trying to fight what they're doing. Inside, I experienced my first Orthodox church service. It's kind of like a Protestant service turned into a 2-hour opera, as everything is chanted or sung by about 5 guys who share the platform. And there is this fancy stage with side wings where stuff can be done out of our sight. And everywhere there are ornate gold carvings and pictures. Most of the service is in Greek, but the Bible readings are in Greek and English. I'm totally blown away that the reading from the Gospels from this Sunday is the very same verse that inspired my sign from the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus saying that we cannot serve God and money or mammon, and comparing the love of money to something getting into our eye and making our whole body useless. The sermon, which is done first in Greek and in English, actually ignores the reference to money and waffles on a bit about eyes and about how different people see things differently. Totally misses the point. And around 10:30 there's a break when people start moving out of their seats, presumably to go forward for communion. I don't know what the rules are or what the implications would be if I were to participate, but I see that others are using this time to get up and leave, so I do the same. I return to my spot in front of the church, and a short while later, others come out with little pieces of bread, and they are given tiny envelopes of some grain with sugar and spices from a big bowl on a table. 2 people come to where I'm standing and hand me their little bags of grain and invite me to come round back where I can have coffee and cake and meet others from the church. Carrie, the wife of the head priest, walks with me, letting me know that I'm welcome. I get a cuppa and a piece of cake and sit at a big table with 2 other guys who appear to be about 30 years old. One, George, has 2 kids, Angela and Rosie. He takes a lot of interest in what I have to say and lets me use the phone to call Cherry. I tell her about the amazing coincidence with the church having the same Bible reading, and I tell her that I see it as a sign from God that I'm doing the right thing and have nothing to fear. And then someone comes over to our table and says something like, "You're an angel, sent here to remind us about what the gospel reading teaches." He leaves before I can say much in response. Then I'm given a container with 6 little pieces of cake in it. And on my walk into the CBD, someone pushes a bottle of strawberry milk into my hand. For some reason, they're giving out free samples. Now the milk, the cakes, and those little bags of sweet grain are more than enough for lunch. I discover a little group called Hope Church, meeting in a room near the train station. I sit in on a rambling sermon about David and Jonathan. A guy named Joseph greets me at the end of the service, but runs off. I don't know how to introduce myself to the others, so I leave. After holding up my sign in front of the shopping center for a while, I go into the library to rest before returning to my spot in front of the mall. Around 3 p.m, an Indian woman named Angeline gives me more strawberry milk and offers to buy me a brand new quilt after learning that I hope to survive out on the streets for 3 days. I urge her to get a second-hand blanket if she really wants to help, because sleeping on the streets may actually ruin a nice blanket. She leaves to see if she can find one at home. At about 3:30 p.m, Cherry turns up. I share with her how things are going, including how the sign makes people think I'm a beggar. Cherry pushes me to accept donations, whereas I remind her that my goal was to not use money at all. But I later consider that it may be spiritually good for some people to give, even if I don't use the money for myself. Cherry leaves, and about 4 p.m, Angeline returns with a lovely king-size blanket in a plastic bag. At 4:30, Cherry is back, and we go into the food court to enjoy the warmth and a place to rest. There on the table are 2 untouched sushi rolls. We wait to see if anyone will return for them, and then I accept it as more of God's provision. I eat one for dinner after Cherry leaves. With darkness and the weather turning colder, I set myself up on the benches under some trees for the night. Throughout the night, the cold wakes me every hour as temperatures drop to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. The blanket is such a blessing, but there always seems to be one part of my body that's feeling cold no matter how much I cover myself. Still, it's like someone else is experiencing the cold, and I personally am just looking on, at peace, and somewhat indifferent to it all. I see this as mini miracle number 2. In the morning, my fingers and toes aren't functioning well, and for some reason I'm seeing double as I walk to the railway station to use the toilet. On the way, I stash my blanket in a great hiding place that I discovered the day before. My cardboard sign disappeared overnight, so I take the opportunity to find a bigger piece and make a better sign. This one says, God or money, only one boss. By 7:30 a.m, I've polished off the other sushi roll and I'm sitting in front of the railway station with my new sign. I take notice that I've not experienced any hunger since the start of the experiment. All that I've eaten is more or less out of duty, whereas I had expected the cold weather would generate a ravenous appetite. That becomes mini miracle number 3 in my estimation. Around 8 a.m, another homeless guy, Paul, tells me about a good sleeping place that may be available if it starts to rain in the evening. 9 a.m. and my fingers are still not functioning well. Cherry turns up at 9:30 with some food that she says God provided for her. I laugh and tell her that it's fine for her, but God will have to provide something else for me. We share a bit before she heads off to do some business. 10 a.m. and I'm back on my own with my sign in front of the shopping mall entrance. By noon I'm fairly tired, and so I spend 2 hours back in the library doing little jobs in connection with this channel, while enjoying the warmth and a comfortable seat. I had hidden my new sign in the underground parking lot, but when I return, it too is gone. And so I grab a great box, which will become an even better sign, and I head off to the railway station, where I pray that my marker still has enough ink for some more lettering. Cherry discovers me at the station at around 3:30 p.m. We have a short chat before she moves on. For the next few hours, I hold up a great sign, but no one stops to talk. This is when I wish this was a 2-man outreach. Even the little Bible I brought is almost impossible to read without my glasses, so time drags slowly. At 5:30 p.m, Joseph from the Hope Church stops to talk. There's a free meal being put on a block away by a Lebanese Catholic church, and it turns out to be absolutely top class. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, steamed veggies and cheesecake. And it comes just as I start to feel hunger for the first time in 2 days. Joseph and I try to share as one Christian with another, but it's disappointing that we have so many differences. He and his friends are having a prayer time at 7 p.m, so I tag along. It includes a good sermon about praise, but again, not a hint of anyone needing to obey anything that Jesus said. I leave at about 8 p.m, get my blanket, hide my sign, and walk to the place that Paul recommended just as a light shower begins to fall. A young couple has beat me to it, but I find a tiny little dark corner where I can stay out of sight if I sit up all night. With all that food in my stomach, it's not such a bad idea, because I suffer from acid reflux if I eat at night. This time the blanket is needed for more padding, under my hips and for my head. Arthritis is pretty painful, but at least I'm dry, and the weather is not so cold. Then at 10 p.m, I'm awakened by the sound of generators, concrete grinders and blinding lights shining in the entryway. A middle of the night construction is underway, and I just have to endure it. Fortunately, the light is so bright that workers just a few feet away from me still cannot see me in the shadow. Now about midnight the rain has stopped, and I'm finding the noise deafening, so I pack up and walk back to the bench that I used the previous night. That works until 4 a.m. when the rain resumes. I trek back to my doorway sleeping spot and discover that the workers have all left. Finally, it is both quiet and dry. By 7 a.m. I get up and head toward the mall, where I meet Paul and a couple of other homeless guys. The shopping center is open, but I push on to the train station after retrieving my sign. At 8 a.m., just as I'm starting to feel hungry again, a young man walks up and offers me a beautiful warm meat pie and then quickly walks off. God bless him. What a wonderful breakfast on a cold Tuesday morning. An hour later, another homeless guy offers to buy me something, but I tell him to keep the money as I already had breakfast. His generous offer was inspiring though, and I tell him so. Cherry turns up again at 9:30 a.m. I have $4 from 2 donations which I had decided to accept, so I buy her a cheap breakfast, and with a clear conscience, I take the free coffee that McDonald's gives seniors with such a purchase. Cherry leaves, and around 10:30 a.m. I go into the library and watch a couple of documentaries about a couple of cult leaders. I find them quite disturbing, in the sense that these guys can be so convincing. No wonder people find it hard to trust me, when you see how much clever deception there is in the world today. At 12:30, back on the streets, I'm busily working on my best sign yet, when a shopkeeper comes over with a cloth shopping bag full to the brim with bakery items. I nod in agreement, but realize that it is far more than I can eat. Then it strikes me that I know where our bus is parked, so I can take it to Cherry and she can share it with other members of our team. After a rest in the library, I make the long walk over to the bus at a nearby park. Cherry's not there, but I leave the bag in front of the door and then return to town, where I can take a short nap on a bench before Cherry turns up with our 3 grandchildren. It seems they were looking for me by the shops while I was looking for them at the bus. We all go into the food court when we bump into my homeless friend Paul. He sees Cherry and the kids and realizes that I must be the guy who wrote a book which Cherry and the kids had distributed to him when they were out on the streets some months ago. Because I have decided to spend the night on a table in the park, one grandson and I walk back to the park together while Cherry brings the other 2 in the car. They offer to carry my blanket and sign in the car, and I accept. About 5 p.m, the park ranger comes by, telling me that he'll be locking the gate. I explain my situation to him and ask if I can stay inside for the night. He's intrigued by what I'm doing, and he agrees, promising to be coming around at about 5 a.m. in the morning when he walks some dogs for exercise. It rains pretty heavily during the night, but there is overhead shelter. Nevertheless, water runs across the concrete under the table and a little bit blew in. I wake up at 1 a.m. with a very sore neck, and my headscarf, which I had used as padding for my head, has fallen in the water under the table. At 5 a.m, I'm awake, looking forward to the end of my 3 days. But first I turn on the free electric barbecue and make a little tent in an effort to warm my feet. I keep touching the hot plate and burning myself, so I throw off the tent and just hold 1 foot at a time, just above the barbecue to kind of toast them. The ranger arrives at around 5:30 a.m. and makes a friendly comment about my strange behavior. With the gates open, I walk to a nearby McDonald's and use the toilet and read the paper until my time is up at 7 a.m. when I knock on the bus door and am greeted by Cherry, who is probably more exhausted by the events of the past 3 days than I am. Well, that was it for my 3 days of survival outreach. Even though I don't think there's anything wrong with asking, I did take note that I never had to ask for anything throughout the entire experiment. Stuff would almost appear out of nowhere. The strawberry milk on Sunday is a good example of that. I can't even remember exactly where it was offered to me, just that there seemed to be a couple of people pushing them out towards someone in front of me and then towards me. I just accepted it and walked on before realizing that it was a very quiet time of the week to be doing such a promotion, and there was nothing else to advertise that it really was a promotion. Nevertheless, whatever it was, God used it to provide for my needs. That's the way it is with living by faith. We don't need to get bogged down in the details of how God is going to provide. We just need to get out there and faithfully seek to build God's kingdom first, and trust that our needs will be met by Him through whatever means He deems fit. Living by faith can certainly be challenging, but it's not impossible. We just have to be willing to suffer inconvenience and be content with food and clothing. We really rob ourselves of very meaningful and satisfying experiences like this when we allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear. Maybe asking some of you to step out onto the streets is too much for a first-time experience. But why not consider linking up with others who have already taken steps of faith, forsaken their material possessions, and are faithfully working for God each day? By sharing all things in common and looking out for each other's needs, rarely does our day-to-day experience of living by faith necessitate us sleeping on the streets, even though we do go on survival outreaches like this from time to time, just to get ourselves out of the comfort zone, strengthen our spiritual muscles, and prepare for any inconveniences and hardships we may have to face in future. Are you willing to give it a try? Send me an email to the address on screen, and I'll try to put you in touch with sincere disciples who are in your country or nearby. Thanks for listening.
Make haste to prepare.